Here goes. Unit 4, Topic 9. Challenges to Sovereignty. It's a long one. Okay, before I go off of this screen here, I wanted just to point out that this mentions autonomous regions. Again, we did autonomous regions a lot already and what they're all about, and this gets a little bit more in depth into what they're a little bit, but I'm not going to put it in another slide when we've done it as much as we have. Pages that this is on, 174 through 178, and then 181 and 182 in the AMSCO book covers all of these things. All right. Good news, that was a lot right there. It's a lot of list, so it's not really too much overall. Okay, subnational political territorial units. That's a mouthful. Okay, that's a different type of autonomous region here. In this case, even like Texas or Kansas or Connecticut would be a subnational political territorial unit. Right? It's just a lot of words to say that. What they're really getting more at here, though, are ones that are devolving, ones that need more attention, the squeaky wheels, so to speak. And we've talked about most of those already, too. We've talked about Spain. All right, so we've been there, done that. We've talked about Belgium. So, been there, done that. Canada, been there, done that. What we haven't talked about is Nigeria. All right, these were all mentioned again in the course description, and that's why I put them up here. But we've gone over them well. We have not gone over really Nigeria at all. Here's the thing with Nigeria: like most places in Africa, it's only a country because at one point the European powers said, "Hey, let's put this part here together as a country." And when they did that at the time, they had an economically viable south part, all right, and actually this is the economy part here, and they had a not so economically viable north part. They thought if we put them together, the south can carry the north and it'll be viable. Well, the problem is the north is culturally different from the south. The north is more like Libya and Egypt and Tunisia, and really even into Southwest Asia. Arabic and Islamic, and the South is more like Sub-Saharan Africa. They really aren't that compatible at all. There's very little in this for the South, really, okay, because what's been happening is laws being passed, Sharia law and things like that, where the Christians and the animists in the South do not want to be subject to Islamic law. Plus, they're the ones making the money. Now, why won't they break away? Well, because like anything, it's not that easy. The North really should be more careful with how they're handling the South because they don't really pay their money. It comes down to that. So they don't want to let them go peacefully because these guys got the money. And that's what's going on in a simple, very simple kind of way in Nigeria. And again, it goes back to that colonialism and trying to lump things together that don't go together. Disintegration. All right. This is when things fall apart. Disintegration. All right. Eritrea from Ethiopia. Okay, Ethiopia was, British colony and then was independent. Long before that, not British, but Italian. The Italians conquered them. They were independent long before that. It wasn't a colony in the traditional way. Italy actually went down there and fought their army and took it over that way. And at that time, that included this area that was Eritrea. Well, they have a lot less in common culturally, and in '93, Eritrea split from Ethiopia. It's always seemed like dirty pool to me. They completely cut Ethiopia off from their seaports there, but that's what happened with them. And again, you can't put culturally unlike things together. Ethiopia was always some kind, under some sort of foreign dominance all those years that this included it, so people never really even thought about it. All right, Sudan we spoke about quite a bit, but that's another good example. And East Timor, I know I've mentioned a couple times, that's a spot in Indonesia. It was a Portuguese colony for a long time. They get independence from Portugal in '75 and '76, in comes Indonesia and says, okay, you'll be a part of us now. They didn't want that. So in 2002, they were able to become independent. And then the former Soviet Union ends up being 15 countries. And actually, these Baltic republics split before the Soviet Union fell. That was kind of the beginning of the end. And then all the 12 others followed suit. Now, before I move on, though, I've got to take this opportunity because up here on the map with Sudan and Eritrea and Ethiopia and Somalia is Deja Booty. And I can't let Deja Booty go by without singing my favorite Deja Booty song. Shake, shake, shake. Shake, shake, shake. Shake your booty. Shake your booty. Oh, shake, shake, shake. Shake, shake, shake. Shake Deja Booty. Shake Deja Booty. There we go. My wife's on the couch. They're probably calling the authorities. All right. Impact of technology on many of these things here. By the way, the test questions, guys, I almost didn't even mention them at all on purpose because it's pretty much just what's, kind of have a general idea what's going on in some of those places. All of this is that way. I was going to get to that at the end. But as we switch here into impact of technology, okay, supranationalism, they that whole idea of, hey, let's have organizations. Let me cover this a little bit to get together and do things. So with all of this easy communication through technology and other ways, it's very easy for supranational groups to either get together and say, hey, let's connect, and that's what all these different spheres show here. Let's connect and have our similar interests work together. So that really helped grow that way. It also, on the other hand, means the opposition can talk together as well. So all these places saying, I don't like this supranationalism. I don't like all of these multinational corporations and government entities making decisions thousands of miles away from me. Let's oppose it. So like a lot of things, what can work for good for you can work for bad. Almost every technology we have, you can see a good use or a bad use. Now, this is depending on your outlook on it, really. Is supranationalism bad? No, but it's not inherently good either. There's a good and bad to each of it. So on that part, it works for the bad as well as the good. In this case, again, unless you like dictatorships and things like that, this pretty much just cuts one way. Dictatorships, people usually wanting to get out from under and run away from, and they have to close their borders, and it's not allowed to be. So they don't really want to communicate other than for people to turn in their neighbors and say, my neighbor thinks the emperor is a fool, and then they can come and take you away. Other than that, they don't want. All right, all of these three countries right here have all had major problems inside of their country because of Twitter and Facebook. Pretty much just those two, really Twitter more so than the other, moves against their government. All right, so China doesn't let Google and a lot of these places do business the way they do business in the United States. They have to shape things up and do things. Let the Chinese censor it more. You guys might remember the NBA thing that happened earlier in the year when some guy from the Houston Rockets office said, he felt for the people in Hong Kong, protesters in China, cut off the NBA. They lost millions of dollars. That's the kind of thing going on. They don't want that out there. When the former president, which was really more of a dictator in Egypt, was overthrown, it was pretty much Twitter based. This is a tweet from him saying, "Hey guys, I'm ready to talk now." All right before they said that's about 8 weeks too late. We asked that a long time ago. This was his last desperate. Right, same thing happened in Iran. Iran ended up getting a little bit more of a hold on it. They're still kind of in control there. But that has had an incredible impact on that. The social media, and helping out movements for freedom in these countries. Okay, now here's a problem. What about these countries that without access? And then that's just what it is. They don't have that. There's not very many unwired countries anymore, but the ones that do, okay, they're left behind on this. And then the last one here, the increased time-space compression. Two reasons. This is verbatim out of the course description, and I'll almost always try to put something that is directly in the course description in these. That's the point of them. But we've talked about it quite a bit, but it is one of those things that you need to think about before you respond to lots of times. Increased compression means it's gotten less. Okay, I can easily see this being one of those deals where you misunderstand what's being asked. If the time space compression increases, that means the compression increases. That means it's getting closer together. So be careful with that when you're doing your test. That, and there's a few other of our terms too, where sometimes a going higher means a lower. Was the main one was that gender inequality index is kind of a backwards number. I wish they'd make it the gender equality index and make it a number that flows better, makes a little bit more sense. All right, more about supranationalism. You've got many reasons for this, and on these, the test questions come for this are just that. We'll get into certain kinds of organizations next, and that's what you'll be needing to do with this. So the first one here is the environmental. This isn't necessarily organizations. Most of this is worked through the UN, but they sign the treaties. This gets back to those areas where lots of times the United States doesn't sign these things because legally our government cannot turn over that type of authority that comes from these treaties. But you can't pollute locally, you pollute eventually globally. That's what brings on these environmental treaties. Almost have to be supranational to be effective. The economies of scale, this is where you've got like the European Union getting together. Bigger is less expensive. That's why buying a case of stuff at Sam's Club or Costco is cheaper than going and buying one off the shelf at 7-Eleven. The more you buy, the better your price is. So a lot of these places get together, not just so much to buy things, but the same thing, you get better deals when you're acting as a block economically. In many ways, you can also control prices more that way if you're the producer. And again, there's money to be made in that. Trade agreements, that kind of goes with this. Maybe you're not joining together in a organization, but you've made agreements between yourself. Things like NAFTA, which we'll get into, I do believe. No, we don't get into NAFTA in the next one, but NAFTA loves to find its way into test questions in human geography exams. So if you're not familiar with the North American Free Trade Agreement, basically you can trade between Canada, the United States, and Mexico without paying tariffs and a lot of other things that other countries have to do. Get familiar with it. Military alliances, I believe, speak for themselves. And here, this is not an example. This is the problem. I mentioned this earlier. When you do these things, you're limiting your own power. When you make an agreement with Mexico saying we're not charging tariffs, then you're not charging tariffs, which is something that the government can normally do. If you're making an agreement saying we won't let companies make this much pollution, then you can't later on have your government go on and say, well, we want to do this. Well, we can't. We made an outside agreement. That's what this means. This is like promising your mom you won't go talk to that kid. Okay? If you talk to that kid, you have broken your promise. That's not to say that you can't. It's just you can't do both with integrity. All right. And again, with the test questions on that, benefits of those kind of things. This is just a list of supranational organizations. Not going to get into what each one of them are in detail, but these first two, the United Nations and NATO. All right. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the European Union. Association of Southeast Asian Countries. That's the European Union for Southeast Asia. Arctic Council, these countries that all have claims to the Arctic. Okay, they kind of need to work those things out, so they have that. And the African Union, which is kind of like the European Union, and the Southeast Asian nations for Africa. These are all specifically mentioned in the course description. I would look up a little more information about these, but at least be able to spit them out, at the very least, as supranational organizations. Keep those things in mind. But I would imagine we need to know a little more than just their names. So, speaking of that, this is a perfect example. Those of you guys who are, of course, those of you guys who are thinking, "Hey, this is open book. I can just wait till the day of the test and open it up, and pull out the answers." Okay, you're probably not listening to this because you think things like that. But if by chance you are, you can do that. If you are trying to ask you about a supranational organization, you don't even know what they are, and you're starting there, and then you got to read what it does. By the time you got 15 minutes left of your 25, and you still haven't even made an outline. Okay, that's where you're going with this. Same thing with those of you guys who might be not doing multiple choice questions, and that's most of you. Very few of you are doing anything on the college board, the AP Classroom, or the Albert stuff. Okay, you're not exposing yourself to the question stems, and you're not exposing yourself outside of what you're reading and outlining, perhaps, to the content. So, we're in a couple weeks now, 2 weeks from tomorrow. Today is Monday the 27th. So let's not wait any longer. That is Unit 4, Section 9. Thank you.